question that we're going to explore for the next half an hour is, if you could change one thing for a better life, what would it be? And I think, having heard so much about so many things today, I think this is actually a very difficult question in a lot of ways. And you'll hear, well, you've heard that they're coming from it in sort of same but different ways, I guess. So I think we'll just get each of them to just give us their kind of overview of what they would say their one thing is, and then we'll kind of explore the differences and the similarities between what the message is. So, Mike, what would you say?
Sure, I have to be first.
Yes, because you're the good-looking one on my right.
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, I want to emphasize the fact that your body is actually connected to your head and vice versa. That is to say, when you think about physical activity or physical exercise, you do it with your brain in mind. And when you think about engaging your brain, think about engaging your brain as it controls your body or your actions. And if you can think about how those processes are so naturally and beautifully unified as a rule, then you're going to spend your time in physical exercise a lot more usefully. Now, most people don't think about it, but your brain is actually creating a model of two worlds. And the first world is the world out there. It's a really complicated thing. It takes a lot of understanding of the brain to sort it out. But the brain receives an equally powerful body of continuous information that flows in from the body itself. And it's actually creating a very complex, you could say, model of that information continuously flowing in from the body. And in a sense, it's created a second world that's all about what's in us, out to the limits of our body, from the tip of our toes to the top of our head. And of course, it's controlling it in all sorts of ways. The brain is influencing what's happening in the body, not just from the point of view of its movements, but also from the point of view of its health in all kinds of ways. If I train the brain of an animal appropriately when the animal is near the end of life, at the end of training, the animal is no longer near the end of life. And I can extend the life of a rat by training it for a month, an hour every day, by about 40%. And when I look at the rat, at what I've done, I see that I've influenced the immune system of the rat. I've influenced the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system in the rat, and how it responds to stress, and how it's controlling the operations in its body in every organ. They're linked together. If I think about action and movement, one of the dumbest things you can do is to think about it only in terms of aerobics. Movement training for the body should always be about elaboration of movement, because the brain is the controller of movement. And from the point of view of brain health in relation to movement, you need to keep that control in tip-top shape. You need to elaborate and grow it, just like you need to grow your operations internally as it relates to thought, perception, and other things. So my strong suggestion to you, if you have one single thing to do when you think about the benefits you get from physical activity, or think of the benefits you might get by engaging your brain in training, is to remember that the head sits on the body, and the body has on top of it the most wonderful controlling instrument you could imagine, a brain.
Fantastic. Wasn't that great? Really fantastic. And I think listening to that, Michael Valenzuela, I mean, that just resonates so much with what you were saying earlier, particularly in the rat studies, the running rat studies, and how that can contribute to our positive ageing through our lifespan. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. And I mean, just in the speaker's room, Mike and I were talking about this paradox of why is it that exercise, physical exercise, seems to be so intimately linked to brain health and vice versa. And if you think about it, up until the Industrial Revolution, physical activity meant mental activity. You know, back when we were cavemen, you know, to going out and hunt, we need to do a lot of problem solving on the fly and planning and remembering and whatever. And then during, you know, the development of society, physical activity, farming, for example, mental work, and so forth. So we've only really decoupled physical exercise and cognitive exercise in the last 100 years as a profession. Now, to do hard mental work, this is the position that we're in, right? We're sitting down, 99% of the time. So that's a society problem that we need to address. And, in all of the preventative measures that we've heard about today, I'm really passionate about moving the onus away from individuals trying to, work towards prescription and more getting, the society, the buildings, the infrastructure, the legislation in a situation that actually promotes these things and makes these things possible. If you make public transport more accessible and affordable, then people are going to have to walk more to get to work. So there's a massive win for brain and body health. I guess that's my perspective on that issue. My one thing is related but in a different way, which is probably the most impactful talk that I've heard in the last few years was a geographer from the University of New South Wales. And she was showing, as geographers do, maps of people's perception of time poverty. So if you're like me and had an incredibly busy day, I feel very time poor today. And so she mapped that all around Sydney. And you overlap that on chronic health, and the two things really align. Chronic health problems, that is. So, I'm a strong believer of the slowing down of our lives as a kind of a pathway towards better overall health, because we are very time poor these days in society. So, that's my mission, is to try and de-wire, get offline more and just take it easy.
I
veggie garden was my thing. Starting your own veggie garden is probably one of the best things.
It's a bit herbal.
Yeah. That's right. And I think what you're saying there as well is, really resonates with the mindfulness work, and certainly thinking back to what Jetsunama Tenzin Palmer was saying about, creating space for thoughts, because often that reactivity in the way that we're living our lives, that busyness, these days, if you kind of cannot, if you were to say, if someone says, how are you, and you go, oh, busy, but if you don't say busy, they kind of go, oh, loser. Because if you're not busy, well, what are you doing? And I think that's the beauty of what mindfulness teaches us about creating space and letting those thoughts settle, so there's some clarity around that activity. So perhaps that leads me, Joseph, would you like to comment first, and then Linda?
I think there is this kind of relentless high standards that we put on ourselves. We put ourselves under so much pressure to do more and more, and we see health as an optional activity, as something we'll get to when we have time, when we do all the important things. So we'll sleep when we have time, we'll have health, And so I really think there is also it's an act of kindness to slow down, and compassion, to be able to tell ourselves, you're doing enough. You've done enough. I have a lot of trouble with this, so that's why I know how hard this is. And I think the one thing I would change is to help create a society that's more compassionate. Now, this sounds like, well, who wouldn't want that, right? But I did some talk radio in promoting this book, and a lot of callers called in, and they felt the best way to motivate people to be healthy was to punish them, to take away their health care, to kind of do these they just saw them as you're to blame. And all the research shows that when you have a stigmatizing environment, in other words, an environment that puts you down for having issues with weight or anything else, that you're actually less likely to exercise and do those things that are healthy.
Demoralizing, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, even if you're normal weight and you're in a stigmatizing environment, you're less likely to exercise. So the point of being hard on other people and stigmatizing is that it doesn't just affect the supposedly stigmatized group, it affects all of us and makes us a less compassionate world where we want to kind of hide inside in shame and not get out there and exercise and be active.
And then with that comes not only the psychological impact, but then the physiological impact, which then results in often, the whole sort of cycle.
Well, we call it a downward spiral sort of thing with, the stress response, sort of reacting, where you have the whole fight or flight response, and there's sort of a downward spiral where the coping can be maladaptive with overeating or smoking or drinking, and then you get depression and et cetera, and it can really just spiral into chronic health problems, right? The comment I was going to make about the earlier discussion around slowing down is that I've noticed a real shift, and maybe it's more so in North America, but where, busyness is out.
Oh,
multitasking
really?
is out.
What?
The research has shown that multitasking is completely ineffective, is that we're much more productive and focused when we do one thing at a time, and that message seems to be getting out. And now, everyone would be like, how are things? Oh, I'm so busy, so busy, so busy. Well, now everyone's like, oh, give me a break. Busy, busy. It's like, it's actually kind of out to be busy.
So it's
We're
like
so
busy is
behind.
like smoking now.
Kind of. Yeah, it's like, give me a break.
good,
You're so
yeah.
important.
Is
You're
it?
so busy.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
it really is.
Because I understand that Australians...
Maybe this is only in Canada.
Australians are I think they're one of the hardest workers in the world. It totally is against the image that Crocodile Dundee spread of,
We're
of
not
a
at all
relaxed
laid
and
back.
easygoing society.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I think we're actually working more than the Americans now. But I don't know about the Canadians. They might be just
We're
relaxed.
kind of like the Swedes.
Yeah.
Is that, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
Enlightened.
Well, it's a more socialist, if to use the not the extreme form of socialism, but it's a more centralized sort of, economy and environment and social systems. And we are a lot more like the Northern Europeans in terms of we have more vacations. And,
Okay.
but really, multitasking is out in certain circles, and you'll see it in the media, and you'll see those discussions because mindfulness is becoming so mainstream in many cases. And this idea of just doing one thing at a time is caught on not only with sort of lay people, but in the corporate realms because it's been shown that actually people are more productive
Yes.
when they're more focused.
So
it's very
rather than
interesting.
having wireless hotspots, we should have black spots.
Yeah.
Where no technology comes in or out, and we just kind of have to actually talk to each other.
Yeah,
Nice.
no doubt.
It is
what would
interesting,
you-
though, that mindfulness is thought of as something that helps you to be more productive
Yeah.
and do more stuff.
Yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
that's why I think the values piece of mindfulness is so important. What are you doing it for? Why do you
Yeah.
care about this?
Well, it's like
Yeah.
Alan was saying about meditation, that people go to it because it's going to help them sleep better, or it's going to do... So there's got to be sort of some value to it instead of just being. And what would you say, looking at all these aspects, how would you say this drills into relationships and what we're seeing in terms of relationships in terms of those issues?
Well, before I answer that, I was just going to comment on the values thing, because I think all of this comes down to what do we value. And it's our beliefs and our values that drive our behaviour. And I think if that is changing in places like Canada and elsewhere, it's a sign that perhaps our values are starting to change. And so that's culture change, really, that we're talking about there. But look, I think sort of bringing some of the threads together, there's a lot of research that shows that our well-being is greatly enhanced if we have positive and sustaining relationships in our lives. That seems to be, universally true. And of course, if we are able to slow down a little bit and pay attention and reconnect with what we really value, then we are more likely to put in the time, invest the time to ensure that we are building relationships of trust and respect in our lives at home and at work. And there are massive, massive payoffs from that. That's a hugely protective from the ups and downs of life if we have people around us with whom we can engage in that positive way. And the converse, of course, is if we're lonely and isolated, then we're much more likely to suffer the health and social problems that I touched on earlier. And so just to sort of close that thread, I would say to Michael's suggestion about the physical exercises, what I'd like to see is that we go walking with a friend, or a group, and that we kind of get the multiple benefits all at once.
This week, some research came out of England about the benefits of not only walking in groups, but in nature. And we were talking about this over lunch, and I was saying I think probably one of the reasons why walking in nature is better than an urban environment is because you have to watch where your feet are going, when you're in nature. And that brings a real sense of mindfulness to the activity, because otherwise you sprain your ankle or or as who was talking about.
I was suggesting that in Australia, because I mean Australians, I've been here for quite a while, but they tell you about all the deadly things crawling around the ground. So you go barefoot into the bush, and it's mindfulness of the poisonous things as an activity.
And the spiders and the drop bears and, you know, those killer koalas.
The drop bears. I've been looking for those drop bears for 14 years.
I'd like to say a little bit about relaxing and just taking it easy, because I think that, of course, it can be carried forward to your destruction. And one of the things that we commonly see, and I commonly see as another fundamental problem, is so many people don't realize that sustaining their brain health and sustaining their good, healthy life takes effort. And there's so many people are so unwilling to spend any time, basically, working on and doing the things or engaging in the things that are critical to their recovering or maintaining their health. So there's a kind of balance between getting past the obsessive and the incredibly complicated sort of forces that can drive everyone a little bit crazy, and actually spending, and to my mind, it's a matter of the quality of the way you spend your time. It's a matter of how you spend your time and effort, because effort spent in the right way can be so rewarding personally and so positive, but it's effortful.
Yeah, and you don't have to teach kids to exercise, do you?
No.
I mean, so I think one of the saddest things is as adults, we're afraid to play and be silly. I started doing karate with my kids, and I felt very silly because I had the white belt, and they had every kid in the dojo had the older belt. It was really confronting for me, very hard to do, because I had to be a beginner and be silly. And so, I mean, now our exercise are, let's all go to the gym and be very serious and look really... I wish we had more forms of play.
Yeah. I have little kids too. They're 4 and 6, and I haven't had more fun in my life. You know?
Absolutely.
Because there I am in the playground again. And, you know, unless you have that kind of catalyst, who's doing that? We're really missing out.
As Michael was saying, you know, you've recoupled exercise in your life, you know, and unfortunately, you know, so often exercise has become this isolated event that takes motivation and energy, and you know, you have to find the right thing and the time and all that sort of stuff. So it takes a certain sort of person. I think it's only about 11 to 13% of people will actually go to a gym, for instance. You know?
It also, in an artificial environment, it promotes something else that's extremely unhealthy, and that's stereotypy.
Yeah, repetitive.
So one of the ways to think about engaging your brain as you exercise is whatever you do, avoid stereotypic exercise. You know, exercise should always be progressive, elaborating. You should always be going somewhere. So an exercise form like Tai Chi or some sort of progressive aerobics, that's great. You know, because things change every day. The challenges continue. And it's more fun.
And it's social.
In my book, I basically isolate dancing as, you know, ticking off all the boxes.
Dancing is hard
memory,
to beat.
socialization, very physically
And besides, you get to dance with somebody you like.
There's a very well known.
Is there a particular dance?
Would you like to show us?
Can you show us something?
Show us something?
Exactly. With a survey like that, he's got to be good at it. You've got to do it.
He's got to be good at it.
I bet he is.
I bet he looks like he'd be a dancer.
Exactly. Tell us about, I think what's so hard for people is that they listen to all these messages. You know, we need to be mindful, we need to exercise, we need to meditate, we need to go slow, we need to go fast, whatever it is. How do we as health professionals help people sort of go through the mire of what do they choose? Because I think if there's a burning platform, you know, if you've been told that you're about to die, or that you have a life-threatening illness, or you are incredibly overweight, or there is sort of imminent dementia, or something that's going on that's created that need. But how do you all think that we can help people navigate choosing their one and making those lifestyle choices? Maybe Michael, to start off with.
Thanks for giving it to me first.
Sorry.
It's a very challenging.
It's
a very challenging issue in today's world, where we have, you know, almost infinite amount of knowledge at our fingertips all the time, and you won't see unanimity of opinion there. There will be differences, you know, just with the diet examples. The latest science that I heard was it had to be low calorie, high protein, medium fat. You know, there's just this constant stream of new research, which is fine, but then there's this information overload issue. I don't know what the magic answer is to that, except that we can always turn things back to basic principles. You know, in my talk, I had that quote from Hippocrates, which was, you know, if you have the right balance of nourishment and exercise, you found the secret to good health. You know, there are some fundamentals that are everlasting, and I think most of the science in the area is refinements of that. I really don't know what the good answer is.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in.
Please.
I'm going to jump in. Can I jump in?
Yeah, you jump in.
Do what you like. It's a simple answer, but, you know, I study mind-body interventions. We've looked at all sorts of different things, hypnosis, yoga, mindfulness, all sort of range of Tai Chi, Qigong. They all work. They all work. But what we found is that it's a person's preference that's going to determine what works best for them. And I've done a couple of studies looking at that. So what are you drawn to? What lights your fire? All these things are good. Exercise is good. You know, these mind-body interventions are good. Choose what you're going to be able to do and sustain. Maybe dancing gets you going. Maybe you want to do some, Zumba or whatever, right? Choose what you like, because then you'll keep doing it more likely.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Like, the hardest part of that, oh, sorry.
It's all right.
I'll make it really short. It'll be like 5 seconds.
You're going to let me do my
But I
last
mean,
piece,
one of the hardest parts, I think, of that is that you have to be really experimental because you don't know what you like. Like, I had to go through like 10 things before I found what I liked.
And what do you like?
But that's okay.
And it was karate.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it wasn't biking. I was on the road. Like, really getting drunk.
But I think what you kept going till you did find something that you like. So not to stop because you don't like the gym, so you'll just sit at home and watch TV.
Or that yoga class was so awful.
But I just think keep it simple. You know, I think that a lot of this is it's common sense, you know, and there are experts who are making careers out of this. And then it overcomplicates it, right? So I think the first principles thing that you were talking about, Michael, doing what you really like. I think, you know, grab a friend and do something you both like, or, you know, and keep it simple. And
your friend will make you keep going,
and
too.
do it. But do it. Don't just think about it. Try something. Keep trying. Keep trying till you find something you love. And then keep doing more of that.
I'd like to emphasize that you should be continually thinking about a strategy by which you continually, every so often, take on something that's new and different. The brain loves fresh new things to learn about, and things that can matter to you and that you can be serious about, and it has to matter to you. As soon as you say, well, I'm good at golf, I really enjoy it, but I don't even have to think about it anymore. Then you're getting some benefit from golf from the walk, but that's it. You know, it has to matter to you on some level, and the brain loves fresh things.
Do you think that perhaps it's a function of how over-challenged a lot of people feel in their lives, that they often avoid adding new things that challenge them in their lives, so they kind of go...
They do, but they're also in neurological retreat.
Yes, absolutely.
And the fact that people are no longer willing to do things because they're too frightened or complex or difficult means they should get themselves to avail themselves of these things that could conceivably rejuvenate them because they need them.
So can I turn this on its head?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Linda.
So when I first saw the question, what one thing that you would change? I thought, geez, nothing. Why do we always have to change something? Why do we always have to get better? Why do we always have to improve? Like, what's wrong with the way we are? Right? And we've heard Alan Wallace say that today. You know, we're always dissatisfied. It's like, I'll be happy if, I'll be happy when. You know, I meet my soulmate, I get the perfect job, I travel to Australia, whatever it is, right? You know, but the reality is there's no reason you can't be happy now. There's no reason. There's nothing standing in your way other than the way you think about it, the way you approach it. And Alan and others have talked about acceptance, accepting that the way situations are and impermanence and change. But the one thing I want to add to that is gratitude. Gratitude for what we have. You know, we're always looking at what we don't have and how we can improve and how we can be better. So can you turn to the person next to you and tell them one thing in your life that you're grateful for?
My children.
You're going to tell me?
Yeah, me too.
What do you
That's
say?
easy.
Oh, I'm grateful for my wife, my family.
Yeah.
You would want to
like my
Well,
children.
thank God for children
Yeah.
because they do.
Yeah.
They
Same.
do keep you
Same.
grounded.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Grateful for today too.
It's the best
been
thing.
a wonderful day.
Initially,
Very
I
good
just
question.
took
No,
part
it's
in
All
it.
right.
Especially the dog.
All right,
I used
everybody.
them as an excuse to do the exercise.
It's enough talking.
I love my
Okay,
dog, even
so-
though he ate my hair.
Enough gratitude. Enough with the gratitude.
Enough of that. That's enough of that.
That's too much gratitude. It's bad
Stop
for
it.
you.
Stop being so grateful. Okay, so I want to just follow this up with a question. So how does it feel to think and talk about gratitude? How does that feel? It feels good, doesn't it? So do that every day.
It does. It's true. When I was involved in the Making Australia Happy series, Russ Harris and Tony taught us about, the 3 good things. And so I'd come home at night and over dinner I'd say to my 22 and 20-year-old kids, so kids, what 3 good things happen in your day? Well, I can't tell you how poorly it was received. They're going, oh, Mum. I go, no, forget it. You've got to at least... Anyway, we had to bring it down to once a week, thinking of the 3 good things. But it was very, very good. Like it is great because you start looking at the small things, not the big things. It was a beautiful day. It's wonderful we're all here together. Lovely to meet everyone. They're kind of things that make your heart glow. I think listening to that, though, Linda... when you think about what the neuroscience is saying about challenge and change and how we need that so much in order to continue to grow, how do you think that sits?
You want me to answer that? I mean, other people can kick in. I think it's a balance, right? You have to be constantly reminding yourself about the things you have and also enriching that sensation of gratitude and well-being. And, asking yourself, what could make me feel grateful today? Is there anything really missing? But not that tense, sharp, brittle striving, like, I just this one thing, and then I'll be happy, and this one thing, and then I'll be better, right? It's a softening around
And
that.
it's because it's not a materialistic necessarily.
Yeah.
All of that, the negative type of grasping is about materialism, really, face it. It's about living the dream, buying this or looking like this, to live the dream, and that isn't the way that we will find happiness.
Well, and just to contribute to your what you've been arguing, how many people's gratitude had to do with other people?
No?
Yeah, me.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and even going to conferences like this, often, you go away and you say, well, the best thing about it was the people I chatted to over morning tea or something, So that's not a surprise.
Absolutely, and I think you two as well have found a great joy in your gardens and doing things like that, really reconnecting, as Claire Rendon was talking about, reconnecting with nature.
I think, to the question you had was, I think maybe come at it almost like the mafia, where you're just skimming a little bit, but often, so it's about just changing your lifestyle a little bit to that more challenging, stimulating, enriching brain activities or physical activity. Preferentially both. But if it's just a little bit like the mafia, you can really make a lot of mental wealth.
I think that's a wonderful note to finish on, is to connect the whole thing back to the mafia. Excellent. So can you thank our panellists, Michael, Linda, and Joseph, and Mike, for a really brilliant discussion. I think you'll all agree that absolutely flew. And we'll now invite Tony to come out to close the day. And also there he is. And also there will be book signings from a lot of this team now afterwards, after this. And, it's just been wonderful to be with you all today and to share such a really exciting day. And I hope those of you who are doing workshops tomorrow, I think you'll have a fantastic time as well. So thank you very much from me and from the panel.
By the time we're 60, more than 90% of us will have known someone close to us who has suffered from some sort of a neurological disorder.
You all know you're not going to live forever. There's only one way into this life and one way out.
I cannot prove to you anymore that anything is possible.
Talk about the marvelous thing that we now understand about our brains.
It gets so much better.